Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today on Owners Club Talks. You're the owner and co-founder of 1010 Wine and Events, and we're so excited to hear all about your story today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive on in. I would love to start from the beginning in terms of what inspired you to start 1010, and did you have any type of aha moment that encouraged you to really take the leap into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I mean, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I always knew that I would be an entrepreneur. Me and my sister both had different businesses before we started 1010. So my sister had her own law practice, and then I had an event planning company, or I have an event planning company. And we decided that we were kind of independently looking for two different spaces in the city of Inglewood. Inglewood is where we were born and raised, and where we still currently reside. And as an event planner, I wanted to have an event space in the city of Inglewood. And then separately, my sister was looking for a wine tasting room. And so we were looking for properties, and then we found the space that we're at now and decided to kind of combine efforts and have a wine bar event space. And so the real reason why we started the business was because we were tired of going outside of our community to enjoy good food, to enjoy good wine, to have a nice event. And so we said, why not create a space in the city where we're from?
I love that.
Thank you.
And how I think one of the biggest questions that prevents people sometimes from starting a business is not only that it can be daunting, but the financial piece of it. So, how did you organize your finances to be in a position to start your business, and how did you fund those early days?
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, like I said before, we had previous businesses before we started 1010. So we did use a large chunk of our savings to fund the initial start of the business. We also had a ton of support from family and friends that saw our vision and really encouraged us to keep going. So they made investments into our business very early on. Our space, when we purchased it, was an automotive garage. So it did take a lot of planning and resources to kind of build out the space. And luckily, I would say like COVID was a good and a bad thing for us because, we got the space in 2019. We were doing construction and then had to pause in 2020 because of COVID. But that allowed us to kind of re up our resources and kind of, figure out a plan of how we could do our build out a little bit less expensive than what we had initially planned because the circumstances had now changed because of COVID.
Super interesting. And on that point, what you set out to do in terms of creating a wine bar and event space within your neighborhood, has the vision changed or has the business changed at all since founding to today in terms of what you guys offer, what you guys do? Has anything evolved?
Yeah, I mean, I think our core values are still the same. We serve the largest selection of Black owned wines in the state of California. And the reason why we decided to serve those wines were because these wine brands weren't being featured in other spaces in Southern California. And so we kind of wanted to be the hub for Black owned wines. We also carry a ton of women owned brands and LGBTQ plus owned brands. So we wanted to be a hub for those different wine brands that are typically not really highlighted in other places. So the vision and our goal for the business has stayed the same, to be a place where people can come, feel safe, have a good time, enjoy good food, enjoy good wine, and also experience very curated events that you're not going to get at other places throughout Los Angeles. So that's always been the goal and something that we have continued now 3.5 years of since opening. But I think another cool thing about our space is that it really is very community oriented. And any given night that you come into the bar, you're going to have, 40 to 50% of the people there are regulars. And so we are very intentional about how we interact with our regulars and we listen to them. So if they tell us like, hey, we don't really like this wine, or hey, can you, potentially add this to the menu, or can you do this sort of event? We've really been wanting to do a candle making class. Like, we're open to hearing those suggestions for our guests because we know that they're the ones that not only come to our space and support us, but even when they're not in their space, when they're not in our space, they're constantly telling their family and their friends and their coworkers. We've had so many regulars that have brought their jobs to our event or to our space and had done events there. And so we know the importance of keeping those relationships. And we really like to listen to what they have to say. And if it's something that we can do, then we 100% try to do it.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, constant feedback, right?
Yes, exactly. And in real time.
Yeah. On a daily basis. I'd love to get in a little bit about the growth and evolution of the business. So, what was that first major milestone that you hit, maybe in the beginning, and what was the biggest feeling of that? Was there like that aha, or not that aha moment, but that like wow, we did it moment that you had in the beginning?
I think for us, like we did initially open up the space, as odd as it is, to make money. Like we
Yeah.
really wanted it to be a space for the community. We were really just had a thirst for a space like this, and there wasn't a space like this. And so we really wanted to build it. So we had our previous careers that kind of made us, that we made a living off of. And this was really just going to be a space that, if we could keep the lights on and pay the bills, like, great, that was the goal. And so I think, from then, like getting into this business, like that goal has definitely evolved. But for us, like, really getting recognition from brands and organizations that we've grown up like really loving and supporting are huge for us. So, we've gotten awards from AAAV, which is the African American Association of Vintners, which is an organization that we've been following for a really long time. And so when they award us as, best restaurant or best customer service, entrepreneur of the year, which are just a few of the awards that we've gotten from organizations that we really have that we love and trust. I think that that's really huge for us. I think also just getting recognition from like corporate brands as well. When we have brands that book with us time and time again, like we have a relationship with Chase Bank, we have a relationship with Delta Airlines. So when they keep on coming back, it really just shows that the efforts that we're putting in to curate these amazing events for them is not going unnoticed.
Yeah, I like to joke and say you and Mallory are like my two famous I'm so passionate about these brands. Like, one of few famous people I know. Um, my next question for you is you talked a little bit about values. I think a lot of brands set out with set values, but then it's sometimes hard to stick with them. You start hiring more people, you start expanding, you start growing, you start having different opportunities. How do you continuously check back in with those original values that you set and kind of keep yourself in check with them?
Luckily for us, we have a really good relationship with the majority of the winemakers that we carry. And because a lot of them are small or family owned brands, we're in contact with them often. So, it's not just like if I need to reorder, like I'm making an order with a huge distribution company and I don't really have a connection to the people that are making the wines. That does happen in some cases, but for most cases, I'm really, sometimes calling up these winemakers and saying, hey, um, can you deliver a case of your Tempranillo? And so that really keeps us that really keeps us in contact with the people that we're doing this for. And so it kind of reminds us what our mission is and why we're doing it. And anytime they come out with a new wine, or if they tell us that they've had to increase production, or that they've now gone into a retail space, and part of that is because people have seen their brand or learned about their brand for us, that is just a motivator to continue with what our vision is.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think you guys are so also tied and true to your values. It's really cool to see, even as new amazing opportunities arise, you always evaluate them through the lens of your values.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge, especially,
Yeah.
when you're in a space where, there's nothing proprietary about a wine bar. There's nothing proprietary about a restaurant, especially in Los Angeles. So I think that when you're moving into a space and you have something that makes your brand unique, you have to stick to that and you have to definitely remind people of that. So when people bring us wines to try that are not women owned, that are not BIPOC owned, that are not LGBTQ plus owned, you know, at this point, people don't even really bring them to us anymore. But if they do, we just have to say, like, this is not the space for them. Like, we're wine lovers just in general. So it might be a purchase that I will make for my personal collection, but it's not something that we would feature in the bar because it's just not a part of our vision.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Next, I want to get into is some of your failures and success since starting. So, um, what has been maybe the biggest or a few mistakes that you've made since starting, and how did it change your perspective in running a business, or what are some of your biggest takeaways that maybe you would tell an inspiring restaurant owner or event planner or someone that's just passionate about learning about business?
Something that I'm really proud of about the way that we started our business was that we just started, like we just
Did
ran,
it.
right? We just did it. And I know that a lot of times people get tripped up on budgets and business plans and all of these things. And I think all of those things are extremely important, but sometimes they're a crutch for not starting.
Yeah.
And we just were like, this is what our goal is. This is what our vision is. Let's bring the people on that will help us get to that point and let's just go. Right. So I'm very proud of that. But I think that, along with that, there's also some things that, have made it a little bit more difficult to run our business. And some of those things are just like those foundations. Like, like I said, we both are entrepreneurs. This isn't our first rodeo, but this is definitely the largest scale operation that we've run before. And then restaurants are a different beast. So if you're not understanding your margins day in and day out, that's why a lot of restaurants close within the first year of opening, because they're not able to, with the margins being so small, they're not able to keep up. And I think for us, we were just lucky to have some initial success out the door, out the gate, but we didn't really have like a basis of like, we just didn't have a base. Like, we
Yeah.
didn't have we had like an employee's manual, but we didn't have like policies and procedures necessarily. We didn't have like an annual budget. We just knew that more money was coming in than that was going out. So we were like, we're good, right? But we weren't really looking at food cost or wine cost or labor and all of those things. And, for the first year or two, no big deal, like I said. But I think, as we're now not only just just one shop, like we're looking to actually build a brand, these things are extremely important and is what is going to make it to where 1010 is still around at year 5, at year 10, if that's what we choose to do. And so, I think that, we did ourselves a little bit of a disservice as to like not, having all of these things in place when we initially started or shortly after opening. But I am, proud to say like it did not deter us from opening. And now we're like, okay, these are things that we need to figure out and making the investment of making our business an actual business and not a hobby anymore.
Yeah, and I have so much respect for what you did, where it's like you had a dream, you executed, which is really the part that matters. And then you know your blind spots, where it's like you
Right.
now know the things that you want to address and work on now that you're up and running. And it's not too late. Like you can still
Right.
build that financial model, you can still get a grip on your margins, you can adjust things on the fly. I think people get caught up and think that the way you start is the way you're going to always operate. And your business has evolved so much in terms of margins, revenue, all of these things from year one.
Right.
And so it's just not too late to start. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's just very transparent of you. And then to hit on your successes, what does you mentioned that like it was never necessarily a money driven venture. It was
Mm-hmm.
your goal was to create this community space, but is there a place or destination that you're headed in terms of that is what success looks like to you, and how would you measure achieving that outside of financial gain or anything like that?
Yeah, I feel like we're really at a crossroads with our business right now, and that's something that we're trying to figure out. So, does success look like additional locations? Does success look like um, having a location at an airport? Does success look like, just growing our wine inventory? Does our success look like growing our personal brands now that we're both sommeliers? Like, what exactly does that look like? And I think that's something that we're really just trying to figure out. Like I mentioned before, we really just kind of started and just ran, right? And it wasn't like we had a year 2 goal, a year 5 goal, a year 10 goal. That really wasn't anything that we were initially thinking about. But now we're in the thick of things like, what do we really like about our business? Do we want to continue? Like, it's a very taxing business. Um, Physically, right? You know, we're lifting boxes, we're moving things, we're setting things up for an event, for events. We're staying up sometimes till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning if we have late night events. So it's very taxing on our bodies, right? Is this something that I want to do when I'm in my late 40s or
Yeah.
early 50s? Like, these are conversations that we're having now to figure out, like, what does the success of our business look like later on down the line. I think immediate success for us right now is just to continue to foster the relationships that we have with wine brands and seeing their businesses grow. Black-owned wine companies make up less than 1% of the wine companies in the U.S. So if we're helping to make our mark and expand those brands and grow that number, I think for right now, that is what makes the most sense for us. And we can do that by exposing the brands to the corporate partners that we have. We can do that by hosting wine events that let people know in our community and those that travel from outside of our community that these brands are here, they're growing, and where you can experience them outside of 1010 so that their success continues to grow. So I think that that's like our immediate goal right now. That's something that feels very tangible. That feels like something that's very reachable. And as you know, we're going into the new year in a couple of months, I'll be able to better answer that question of like, what does long-term success look like? Because we would have figured it out a little bit more.
Yeah, and you're at this really cool point too where like you alluded to earlier, like you're getting those foundations that maybe you didn't have in the beginning set up
Right.
right now. And once you have those really stable, it's so easy to daydream about where you want to take the business because there's so many different ways. But right now, I think you're like laser focused on those foundations, which is really cool to see. And then there's endless places where you could expand.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
My next question for you is you've done something incredibly special, and I think people are going to wonder like how. You've created not only a community within your space that if you look up 1010 wine and events, it's like there are hundreds of 5-star reviews. People are obsessed with the space. It's such an upscale, luxurious feeling, but also like no one feels out of place type space.
Hmm.
But then you also work with, like you named a few, some of the biggest companies in the United States. And so,
Hmm.
what do you think has made you 1010 successful at serving both parties, both the person that's in your space and then also serving some of the biggest brands?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it kind of goes back to that aspect of what makes you unique. And I
Yeah.
think 1010 is literally a direct reflection of my sister and I's personality, right? So we have grown up in a city, which, you know, when we grew up in Inglewood, it was like Inglewood's up to no good. So, like, it was a little bit of, I'll just say a little bit of character to the city, you know, it was colorful. And so we have that background, but we're also educated people. We're also people that have a diverse friend group. We're also people that travel a lot. And so I think that all of those things that make up our personality and make up who we are is what we kind of pour into 1010. And literally, that's how we grew up and that's how we were raised. Like, we grew up in a family that didn't have a ton, but we had enough to uh, we were comfortable, but it wasn't a thing where our parents, we never thought we were better than anybody and we never thought we were less than anybody. And so that's kind of the feeling that we bring into the space. It doesn't matter if you come in there in a suit. It doesn't matter if you come in there in joggers. Like, we're going to treat you the same because that's kind of our values and that's kind of how we grew up. And we're kind of all of those different aspects of 1010 are, you know, are within us. I could go to a 5-star restaurant and talk with the best of them about wines from different regions all over Europe, but I can also, you know, go with friends to a dive bar and grab a beer. And so I think that it's truly just a reflection of our personalities and how we grew up and how we were raised.
I love it. It's yeah, I can't wait to come. And then my next question for you, and I've got three more left, is
Mm-hmm.
if you were to get on a personal level, less business, more personal, what are some daily habits or routines that have made you successful and made a restaurant get past that first year and actually grow and scale year over year in revenue? What are some of those like daily things that you do that maybe you would suggest or maybe have just worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, I try to have a routine with like meditation and prayer when I wake up in the morning. I try to like work out regularly. But to be honest, I am very much fueled by my family and by my friends. And so I noticed like the first, even year that we opened, I would miss friends' dinner, birthday dinners, or I would skip out on like family trips because we just weren't available. But as we were moving into year two, I just noticed that I just wasn't as happy, even though the space was doing really well. And it was because I was missing out on those things. Like, I don't want to miss my best friend's birthday. Like, that's like, the things that really fuel me. And so, what I have been intentional about over the last 2 years, even as, you know, there's more demand on us from the business, is like carving out those time with carving out that time with my family and friends, blocking off days that are super important to them, and just like, you know what, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter who comes calling. Like, I can't miss this dinner, I can't miss this vacation. And so that is something that, it's still really hard to do, but I think it's been important to kind of keeping uh, me level headed throughout all of this.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it has to be sustainable, right? Like it's by no
Exactly.
means a sprint owning this thing, and you work weekends constantly, and so it's like
Right.
that's usually the time also that the things that you love to do the most and the people are typically around. So yeah, having that, I think that's also what can give restaurants longevity. So thank you for diving in there.
Yeah.
Uh, my next question for you is: you've been working with Owners Club and specifically in one-on-one coaching for a few months now.
hmm
And if you were to recommend it, first of all, who would you recommend it to and what have you found you've received from it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would recommend it to anybody who's looking to go to the next level in their business, or anyone who feels like there's some cracks in their business. I feel like, we were doing maybe about 60% things right, right? I think that there were definitely things that we do really, really well.
Yeah.
But I think in order to go to the next level, some of those things that I discussed that we needed to make sure we implemented, I don't think that we would have been able to do, maybe eventually, but not at the speed and at the accuracy that we're doing it right now. And so I would say any entrepreneur that's looking to like level up their business, move into a different stage of their business, Owners Club would be, that's who I would recommend Owners Club to.
Thank you. Those are some very kind words. And then we end on a very like random note in terms of picking your brain on the most unexpected or bizarre thing that has happened to you while you've been running this business.
Um, I mean, I think there's two things. One, anytime like a celebrity just kind of drops in, I think it's really kind of funny. And we've had some people that I won't name, but just that, like some A-list celebrities, and I'll get a either text from my team, or I'm at the bar at that day, and I'm like, wait, is that so and so? Like, I think that that's like really, really funny and strange. And then, I live in the city where my business is. I'm born and raised here. So, we definitely have a foundation here as a family. Like, I know a lot of people in the area. But I think it's funny, like, now when I go out, I can't go out without somebody saying, hey, that's the 1010 girl. So, like, I've
Right.
had to, like, change how I go to the grocery store or how I go to the gas station. Like, it's not just like high bun and like, sports
Sweatpants.
bra anymore. Like, I have to like look somewhat decent because people won't know my name, but they'll constantly say, hey, you're the girl from 1010. So I just went to a concert on Friday night, and it was in Inglewood in my city. And I was with a friend, and I got stopped like literally like 10 times. And my friend was like, do you know all these people? I'm like, well, I know them because they're regulars at 1010, and they don't know my name. Some of them might, but for the most part, they're just like, 1010 girl, or hey, are we getting wine after this? So I think that will always be weird to me. I mean,
That
it's
is
like extremely like I'm like grateful for it, but it's just funny for people to like recognize you in that way.
You are famous. But you also, I think one of the things that you're not only incredibly humble, but you do every job at 1010 often. And so I
Hmm.
think what's also really unique is sometimes people have a story that you've told me before is people sometimes have you as their waitress for the evening and at the very end or maybe never find out that you also own the space. So I think one of the things that is why you've also been able to maintain the same level of experience for clientele is you're the one doing it. So you know the
Yeah.
craft and the operation and you know those like the back of your hand. So very cool. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for taking the time to chat with me. It's been amazing to learn a bit more about your journey and 1010 and all of it. So thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.